Well, hello, everybody. Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Tanya Ash. I'm Director of Programs and Member Engagement here at World Trade Center Denver. This webinar is part of our Tariff Navigation series delivered in partnership with the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade through the state's Economic Resilience Technical Assistance Program. The goal of this series is to give you practical strategies around sourcing, supply chain, classification, and compliance, so you can be better plan and respond to the tariff changes. As a reminder, maybe we can show the next slide, Andrew. This one is the sixth webinar that we're doing, and so far it's the last one in the series. But we want to hear from you. So if that's very useful, we've heard from a lot of you that you'd like us to continue offering these webinars on Friday. Put a plus sign in the chat so that we know that that's something you'd like to see more of. Also, I'm curious to see how many of you attended these webinars. Like, how many did you actually attend? Maybe just put a number. So there were, again, 6 in this series. And if you missed any of them, you can view and review all of them on our YouTube channel. Again, this is a brief view of all the 6 that we've done so far. So for nearly 40 years, World Trade Center Denver has supported companies navigating imports, exports, and global operations. And over the past year, we worked closely with hundreds of companies and businesses, specifically on tariff-related solutions. In addition to these webinars, again, this is a reminder, we're also offering a direct support. Through audit, qualifying companies can access up to $1,000 matching reimbursement grant to help offset consulting cost. If you're interested, you can fill out the request form. The link should be in the chat to schedule your first initial discovery call. Premier International Business Consulting, consulting company on supply chain management, trade compliance. Former CEO of American River International in New York and Apex Global Logistics supply chain operations in LA. Tom has over 30 years of experience in assisting companies all over the world managing their import and export operations. He is a member of the New York District Export Council, sits on numerous boards, corporations, and is considered a leader in time business verticals he works in. He has now authored over 19 books in global trade and is in the middle of the 8-book series titled The Global Warrior, Advancing on the Necessary Skill Sets to Compete Effectively in Global Trade. Tom is also the director of the National Institute for World Trade and a 30-year-old educational and training organization based on Long Island. We're so lucky to have you here, Tom. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Let me pull up the PowerPoint. So can you see that okay?
Looks good to me.
Great. Okay, so everybody, thank you, first of all, the World Trade Center of Denver to allow me to present for the next hour or so. I want to try to make it as informative for the audience as well. And we're going to talk about the issues involved in trade today, and particularly I'm going to share with you a number of the solutions that are available. And one of the primary solutions that's available is the utilization of foreign trade zones. And it's important to note that the World Trade Center of Denver is a centralized activator for foreign trade zones, as they're the grantee in this geographic area, and provide significant levels of support in helping companies evaluate whether foreign trade zones are appropriate and how to actually make it happen. So with that, my 21st book actually just came out 2 months ago, and it's all about the subject we're talking about today. And I would like to give it to somebody who's listening in today. You'll notice my email address on the left-hand side, tomcook@bluetigerintl.com. At the end of the presentation on the hour, not before the hour is over, but once the hour is over, anybody can answer this question: why don't polar bears eat penguins? Whoever answers that the first person after this webinar is over will send you a book. Okay, so obviously everybody who's involved in global supply chain is fully aware of the chaos, the disruption, and what we refer to as unprecedented uncertainty. And while it was announced I did this for 30 years, I'm almost up to 40 years now of doing this work, and I've never seen anything like we've seen in the last year and a half. I want to try to also share with you what Trump's goals ultimately are, and then really the focus and spend most of the time on the solutions. One of the key issues that's involved with global trade and all people involved in importing and exporting and working for principal companies that do that is really trying to create resilience and stability in the global supply chain. And that's really what's threatened. In normal international business operations, we have geopolitical economic issues, war and terrorism, and obviously we're now also facing now a war in Iran over the last 60 days, and that's caused lots of issues relative to the shortage of petroleum products, the high cost of fuel that we pay here in the United States and all over the world. There are normal weather issues that come into play. Climate change is a big factor. Hazards of international shipping that are generally in play, bad players in international trade, and appreciate that customs is also a challenge for most companies that import, and appreciate for those that are involved in exporting CBP equivalent in foreign countries is also of a challenge. It threatens trade, threatens margins, threatens resilience and sustainability, and also the changes that Trump is being made in the more enforcement structure of U.S. customs. The key issue involved in dealing with resilience and sustainability is the ability to pivot quickly, develop resources, and create diligent and creative solutions. And that's a lot what we're going to share with you today, what some of those solutions might be. So as a high-level example of this, global sourcing, having diversified multiple providers in different countries around the world is a risk management tool. Because if one country has a sanction, one country has all of a sudden high tariffs put into place, you have the ability to shift production to a new supplier. Carrier selection. Work with carriers that provide routing options and contingency planning. Obviously, ships that were primarily going through the Strait of Hormuz is blocked currently, but if a carrier had established contingency plans, which many have, they now route their ships around the south coast of Africa. Safety stock. A lot of companies are clearly increasing their level of safety stock to prevent the impact of the sudden changes and disasters and uncertainty in global trade. And we're also recommending that they place it in multiple locations so not one location would be impacted if any type of event occurred. So let's share with you an example. 2 years ago, in 2024, we worked with a company in Northern California, and they use a significant volume of petroleum, well over $200 million worth of purchases a year. And they use the petroleum in the manufacturing process because they make plastic parts, which petroleum is the base raw material, for medical products and high-end component needs in manufacturing. They established, with the concept of putting all your eggs in one basket, a significant purchase agreement for 100% of their supply with a Saudi-based energy company. It was cost effective. It was assurance of delivery on a regular basis. Made a lot of sense. Okay. When we did the analysis, though, we recognized to them that first of all, when we did this 2024, President Trump had won the election in November of 2024 and was going to take office in January of 2025. And he clearly had significant dialogue with the public saying that he was going to go after Iran, particularly in making sure that they didn't have a nuclear weapon and try to eliminate their exposure with their terrorist organization structured all over the world. So we turned around and said to this company that you have a potential longer term risk if you have all your production coming out of Saudi if some event happens in the Middle East. So in December of 2024, we established two alternative sources for them, and we moved 70% of the purchasing out of Saudi to one in Canada and one down in Galveston, Texas. Okay. So you can appreciate at this point in time, 60 days ago when this war broke out and Saudi, through certain ports, were not able to ship petroleum products, this company had easily the ability to shift the Saudi production to Canada and to Texas. Okay, it was protected, which is why I received a box of Cuban cigars from the owner of that company, because in fact, those risk management steps taken 2 years ago have had a real good impact on their supply chain in the face of this war in Iran. So you have a decision to pay additionally more money for a better risk management program is really the concept that we're working with. So on this page, which is an important page for you to view, is 20 solutions that we've put together going back all the way to the early 1990s and have tweaked over the years as solutions that companies can actually work with in order to mitigate the impact of tariffs. Even though tariffs back then averaged 4 to 6%, companies still wanted to reduce that cost if they could. So we started to develop solutions. So when Trump first took office in 2017, we were using these with great ease. And then again, when he took office in January of last year and started to put forth the reciprocal tariffs, increased 301 and 232 and other tariffs and controls in place, a lot of these solutions have been utilized. So the first one is the concept of trade compliance management, which is usually kind of restricting a company from making sure that it's compliant with both import and export regulations. But there's an opportunity for people in trade compliance, not from just saying no, but to advising how to utilize certain features in trade compliance to the benefit of a company. One of the examples is the use of free trade agreements as a source to reduce duties coming in and actually duty elimination if it's the right country. So the idea here is that trade compliance management is not just enforcement, but it also creates opportunity within organizations. The way we view and consider how we approach what of those 20 solutions work is we dissect the supply chain, and this is recommended to all people listening in, that you look at your acquisition cost as one silo, freight as a second silo, customs clearance as a third silo, duties and taxes a fourth silo, and the last mile delivery, inland freight, warehouse, fulfillment, distribution to get it to a final customer. When you silo it along these lines, it's very easy then to assess and investigate what options might be available to utilize to reduce risk and cost or create business process improvement. Once we work with those silos in the assessment process, which is part of those four steps that we create going forward, the first step looks at those 5 silos is assessment. From that, we make recommendations and we financial model to say, here's what these costs would be of making these changes in your supply chain and what the ROI will be. Then an operational model is created, which says, here's what you need to do within your supply chain to make these changes happen. And the last step is implementation. Normally, this process takes usually between 60 and 90 days, but because of the slowdown of how government processes a lot of the programs, it could be as much as 120 to 180 days for implementation to take place. So one of the first things that I want to focus on that's available to us is container freight stations, bonded warehouses, but I really want to work and focus on foreign trade zones. And again, I reiterate that the World Trade Center of Denver is the grantee for your geographic area and becomes a support and resource to you to help facilitate this. The benefit of the foreign trade zone, it holds goods indefinitely without requiring a customs clearance. So when goods come through the border into the FTZ, there's no obligation to customs clearance. Therefore, there's no obligation to pay duty. It's only once the goods exit the facility is that obligation required. And you have an indefinite amount of time that you can keep it in, as compared to a bonded warehouse, which only allows for 5 years. If we export from the FTZ, such as saying going up to Canada or Mexico or the Caribbean, as an example, it moves freely without any obligation of paying duty because the goods would never enter the U.S. economy. There's reduced clearance costs, there's reduced merchandise processing fees, and in a foreign trade zone, as compared to a bonded warehouse, if the goods come in as a widget, it has to leave as a widget. In a foreign trade zone, we allow manipulation to occur, manufacturing and assembly. Tariff inversion, which is a benefit, is temporarily on hold through executive order. Okay, and they're controlled by the local grantee, the Foreign Trade Zone Board in Washington, and the local customs offices that have expertise in foreign trade zone management. So to understand this, because it's a great program for companies to enter, it's a legal and proven supply chain method for reducing landed costs, those 5 silos. It reduces the total cost of a shipment entering the United States on goods both imported and exported. They exist in the United States and appreciate the fact that they're also in overseas markets as well. We put a lot of foreign trade zones in Asia as well as in Europe. Who's eligible for it? Companies that import and export, 3PLs, and service providers who facilitate import and export transactions can set up their facilities that they would sell that FTZ capability to as a third-party operator. The process for a foreign trade zone is we have to go to the grantee, okay, who brings us into the Department of Commerce, and within the Department of Commerce is the International Trade Administration, and within the International Trade Administration is the Foreign Trade Zone Board. But the key entry point is the World Trade Center of Denver for this geographic area. The enforcement of foreign trade zones is outsourced to U.S. Customs. So in every area around the country, there are local customs officers who have expertise in foreign trade zone management, and they work with the grantee, they work with the Foreign Trade Zone Board in creating the activation of the foreign trade zone, and then ultimately any enforcement responsibilities. But at the end of the day, what we have to evidence to the Foreign Trade Zone Board and Customs is that the local management team in that FTZ facility is capable of being the operator and the user and maintaining a compliant and secure facility because basically you're left alone once you get activated. And unless you cause a problem, you won't have any issues in seeing customs bother you. So another way to look at the authorization flow chart is the first approach is to the grantee, which obviously is World Trade Center. Okay, it goes to the Foreign Trade Zone Board, and then ultimately activation happens at the local level with the local customs office doing a site visit and making approval. The 3 key players then there are the grantee, the operator of the facility, and the user. If a principal importer or exporter sets up the FTZ in their own facility, they are both the operator and the user. If you use a 3PL facility, the 3PL is the operator, and the principal companies that get the benefits within the 3PL facility, they're considered the users. So again, I want to make the importance here because there's a very important tool in mitigating the impact of tariffs, which is it's the deferral of duties and taxes. Once the tariff inversion comes back into place, which we expect sometime in the fall, there's a huge benefit in paying lower duties on finished goods if there's manufacturing. No duties or taxes paid on exported goods. We have reduced clearance costs and reduced merchandise processing fees because we can do weekly transactions. In a foreign trade zone, Customs says we don't need to do transactions when goods move in and out. You can once a week create a manifest of all the activity of goods in and out of your facility and present that to Customs in a weekly manifest. So you have 1 customs clearance charge and 1 merchandise processing fee. And in some jurisdictions, relative cities and counties and so forth, they have other tax benefits that might be available for foreign trade zone operators. As an example, we dealt with a bicycle importer that not a very large company, $25 million in business, and they were bringing in finished bicycles from China. But what we did was structured in the back of their warehouse where they were just doing distribution. We created space where they bring in parts and components and finish the assembly process in their own facility. So they bring in, steering wheels and chains and brakes and pedals and structure to the bike, okay, and then put it together, okay, finishing that assembly in their facility in Phoenix. So on $25 million worth of annual business, they have savings of $3.5 million a year against only $125,000 of cost. So when you do the financial modeling, these are the types of numbers that are available to you. And the more business that you have for larger companies, the more benefits that are there. As another example, a company that we just worked with recently in Baltimore imports $100 million of raw petroleum products into the facility that you see a picture of below. Okay. They can hold that product up to 9 months before they actually move it along to their customers. We created a foreign trade zone at their terminal. The annual cost in operating this foreign trade zone, of which most of those costs relate to a technology which they didn't have that they had to set up, okay, but they're exceeding benefits more than $3.4 million annually. Again, you can see how the financial model works that makes these things very well. So again, foreign trade zone can also be set up for 3PLs. Okay. It creates differentiation for the 3PL. So if you're a freight forwarder, custom house broker, warehouse operator, this is something you want to think about. It adds value. You help support your clients in reducing their landed costs. You create a tighter partnership with your customer, more sustainable relationship, and you can add additional revenue streams onto your operation. Okay. In a 3PL case, one that we just did recently in Los Angeles, 750,000 square feet, they switched 50% of their space to a foreign trade zone, and they set it up designed for distribution and some kitting and light assembly. It increased their revenue in the first year, which we just finished, of $675,000 against approximately $90,000 of annual cost, again creating a significant ROI, well worth the effort to go down this path. So you might ask the question at this point in time, if a foreign trade zone is such a great thing, then why aren't more companies involved? First of all, you have to meet certain standards and criteria. I'm going to show that in a moment. There's cost, time, and initiative. It's not terribly complicated. It's not rocket scientist stuff, but it does require some expertise and skill set. And that's where the World Trade Center of Denver comes in supporting you and providing information flow and capability and wherewithal so that you can move your company into a foreign trade zone status. So the three key ingredients of getting activated by the Foreign Trade Zone Board and Customs is that you have to have compliant product accountability and facility security. And compliance, what we mean in this category is that you have to be responsible in your import and your export operations in handling everything according to import and export regulations. So things like record keeping issues, using the right HTS and Schedule B numbers, making sure you have the right valuation, okay, correct origins, documentation is prepared correctly. Those type of things have to be in order. Product accountability. As the goods are received into an FTZ, inventoried, work in process, inventoried, and as it exits, you have to account for the product as it moves through that. And while some manual systems may work, 99% of companies use a technology, and we can adapt their existing ERP or their WMS system to accommodate that. And then there are individual bolt-ons and there are individual complete technology systems specifically designed for foreign trade zones. And the last pillar is facility security. Okay. The basic way to say this is that customs wants to make sure that no one can drive up in a car or a truck and find them in the middle of your inventory without various levels of being challenged. So fencing systems, camera systems, locked doors, employee badges, and things like that, some combination of those things is what customs is looking for. They look at the nature of the product, the location of the facility, and collaboratively a security system is designed that meets the basic criteria that local customs wants in that community. The importer-exporter must evidence, one, that the foreign trade zone provides benefits. So we do a financial modeling up front to make sure we understand what the costs are and what the ROI is going to be, because they don't want to guarantee this privilege to you unless it makes financial sense. They want to make sure that the foreign trade zone is in responsible hands. That's one of the things that your grantee works with you on and individual consultants to make sure that you have it structured correctly, okay, that it's compliant and secure, that SOPs are in place, and tied into SOPs is also training, okay? And when all that is demonstrated, you then get activated by customs. And again, it used to take between 60 and 90 days. Today it takes somewhere between 120, 180 days to get there. Distribution happens faster than if we're doing manufacturing, production, or assembly. So foreign trade zones is really at the top of the list, okay, that's available to you. And as I mentioned, World Trade Center Denver can be an important partner with you in that process. But there are other strategies that I want to talk to you about that are available to you. Customs has an understanding in their regulations that a lot of times a company will buy from a foreign supplier and they will have an intermediary involved as a selling or buying agent. And that intermediary will receive a commission or a fee for doing that intermediary work. So Customs says all we're concerned about is the amount of money that's paid to the factory, not the amount of money paid through a third party. So they allow you, if you can evidence that there's a third party involved, that you can then declare the value just declared to the factory, which obviously is lower and lowers your duty obligation. So in this example, we worked with the Houston oil equipment importer, pay to the supplier 155,000. The commission to the buying agent is 10%. So they only have to declare not 155, but 139,500. At a 50% duty rate, the savings per transaction is $7,500. They have 30 shipments annually, so they're saving $232,000 by using this benefit that's available with customs. Tariff engineering is another opportunity for companies that import. And at the end of the day, what this is that you're redesigning your product, okay, or using different materials in your design and structure where it changes the HTS number and allows you then to come into the country with a lower duty rate. Okay. So the perfect example here is a company that worked with a couple of years back, which was a German auto truck products company selling truck components into the United States. They fairly sizable company moving $500 million worth of product into the United States every year. As we all know, the administration has gone after steel, aluminum, and copper, not only as its singular product, but as a derivative in when it's engaged within the structure of a machine product or a product that's manufactured. Their products, we identified that steel made up approximately 30% of imported values at 15%, $22 million in duties. Our engineers on our team, working with the technicians and engineers on the importers team, were able to work with the supplier in replacing steel with a very strong composite material. They beta tested it, they found that it worked successfully, and they started to move these imports in without using steel and therefore did not have that additional surcharge. Okay. It impacted lower the tariff approximately $10 to $11 million in duties annually by just making a component change in the manufacturing process. When we import things, unless it's Canada or Mexico where we might use truck and rail, the rest of the world, 95% of movement that come into the United States from overseas either come in by ocean or air freight. And when we look at ocean freight and compare it directly to air freight on a per cubic meter or per kilo basis, okay, air freight is 18 times more expensive. So the big issue is why would we ever want to use air freight? Some products work better under air, okay? And most of the time, it's a result of companies having to expedite shipments from overseas into the United States. So we investigate as to why is the company heavily using air freight, um, and they have a lot of these expedited shipments coming in by air freight. And what it falls back to in our investigation is that there's a failure in the demand planning process. Okay. Somewhere along the line, they're not giving information to their suppliers timely enough, okay, in order for them to produce so that ocean freight can be utilized. So we then focus on the company demand planning system, which usually means technology enhancements, okay, or operational enhancements, okay, and we average anywhere between 15 to 20% savings when that is accomplished. More specifically, we had a Texas-based industrial products company, okay, that was spending $83 million on the freight, huge company in the Fortune 1000 category. But 40% of that spend was utilized for expedite freight shipments. So we peeled back the onion several levels, okay? Our study assessment uncovered that only about 4% of the expedited spend was justified. The other 96% really wasn't. So we made significant adjustments to their demand planning system by buying an additional bolt-on technology, which cost the company $87,000. But we were able to reduce their freight spend by $15 million annually by moving the majority of freight by ocean and not by air. Okay. Again, we're mitigating the impact of tariffs by looking at those five silos in the supply chain. This one is impacting the freight silo, not necessarily the tariff, but the freight silo. But it lowers the landed cost, which is really at the end of the day what we're looking to accomplish. Another great option that we have is the concept of friendshoring, nearshoring, and reshoring. Friendshoring is bringing it to a more friendlier country, and make the comparison as compared to sourcing from China, Vietnam, Malaysia, South Korea, uh, India would be perfect examples of friendshoring. Nearshoring is bringing it closer to point of use to the United States. Manufacturing in Mexico would be an example of that. The Latin America would be an example of that. The Caribbean, we move actually a fair amount of companies into the Dominican Republic, where there's a very sizable and capable manufacturing facilities. Reshoring is bringing it back to the United States. Okay, and I'm going to emphasize here that one of the best models to bring back manufacturing and assembly production in the United States is the foreign trade zone. The model that we described earlier really demonstrates that capability. We have about more than 50 projects now going on across the country in bringing back manufacturing and certain aspects of distribution to the United States and utilizing foreign trade zones to accomplish that. So we worked with a New Jersey company, and they were purchasing an oil additive from China, and they saw their tariffs start going up to 15%, then to 25%, and then settling at 50%. We found an alternative supplier in the Mexican Maquiladora program. Maquiladora program is a swath of land in Mexico along the U.S. border from California to Texas. And manufacturers that operate in that zone, and the manufacturers could be Mexican or foreign owned, when they import parts, components, and raw materials to manufacture there, they don't pay duty coming into Mexico. And then under the USMCA agreement, when the goods come into the United States, no duty is paid as well. So in this particular case, the acquisition cost was 7% higher, but one, we eliminated the duty completely, okay, through the USMCA. But the landed cost was very comparable. And there were savings in oversight, easier to manage relationship in Mexico than it is in China. Travel costs were reduced as well because it's easier and less expensive to travel to Mexico rather than China. Okay. And lead times changed pretty dramatically because we had a 4 to 7 day transit as compared to a 4 to 7 week transit from coming in from China. Reshoring, obviously very politically correct. Obviously, it's one of the charges that all administrations do, but clearly show on the current administration is trying to do this. Okay. The challenges, though, are creating a financial model, okay, accessing blue collar skilled labor here in the United States, and the support of the energy requirements, making sure that that's available as well. But the foreign trade zone model, okay, helps clearly with that first challenge of being the financial model, is it does allow for a lower cost to be obtained because of all the benefits in those five silos. Okay, another opportunity is we have a company that is based in Europe and is now shipping something into the United States, selling it directly to a U.S. importer. But that company in, let's just say Germany, has a sales office here in the United States or a maintenance office here in the United States. The idea is that if they have a 45% markup in their sale, when those goods come through the border, they're paying 45% additional duty, okay, from a wholesale position. So the idea is now to try to move that transaction to a transfer from parent to a subsidiary, eliminating the markup, lowering the duty rate, and then creating that transaction from the maintenance or sales office directly to their buyer. So the way to look at this best is always a case study. So we had an Italian medical products company that had a US-based sales office actually in New Jersey. And the product is transferred to the US and they had a 42% markup. So at $250 million in sales to the United States, they could save almost $17 million in duty. Now the US business will have a income tax expense that it didn't have previously, but that was only $2.5 million. So the net savings as an organization was $14.5 million by doing a transfer to the subsidiary rather than a direct sale to the US buyer. The US company doesn't really care about it in any way that it is, because at the end of the day, it really lowers their cost of goods purchased as well. So these outlined strategies are really things that we have in place. We're working with companies all the time. They create a risk management approach, okay? And a lot of the concept is to stop chasing cost and work towards really obtaining the best value for your spend. And the idea of doing that is really changing the culture within your organization to obtain that kind of mindset. We're very successful at making that happen. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of bring up to you, and actually a new executive order came out from the White House yesterday, is that Trump is of the mindset that a significant amount of fraud is being created for U.S. importers to lower their cost of bringing the goods in by impacting duty. So he's looking at areas related to the valuation that's used on the documentation being incorrect, the origin being incorrect, or the wrong HTS number. And he's now more aggressively having customs as part of the executive order, being allowed to ask for a bill of materials, which outlines where each of the components and materials originate from. And if there isn't a predominance of that value add within that country, then you're not allowed to say made in so-and-so. And he's going aggressively after two particular countries of origin, one being Vietnam and the other being Mexico, where a lot of Chinese companies have moved their manufacturing to Vietnam or Mexico. And in fact, it's really not really a Mexican manufacturer or a Vietnamese manufacturer. And we're seeing a significant increase in challenges. The bad news relative to this whole subject is that Trump has also created a task force between the Department of Homeland Security, which the enforcement side of Customs reports into. Customs also reports into Treasury for the collection of duties and taxes. A task force aligned with the Department of Justice to go after aggressively companies that Customs has identified of creating these fraudulent situations. 3 years ago, if we had an importer who improperly used the wrong HTS number or wrong origin information or the wrong valuation on their invoices, we would present the corrections to Customs, pay the duty responsible for due, possibly a fine and penalty, and we would move on. It's now being aggressively pursued as a claim for fraudulency. And if they prove that there was intent, willfulness, or egregiousness, it then gets elevated to potentially a criminal case. And obviously, we want to not be involved with any of those type of things because they dramatically are much more concerning. So one of the things that we recommend is that companies become CTPAT certified. Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism is a voluntary program put by Customs. And when you enter that program, which there are no costs involved in entering into the program with Customs, you're able to raise your profile of compliance and security, not only with U.S. Customs, but also with other government agencies that are involved in enforcement on the export side. The example would be the Bureau of Industry and Security. You gain access to benefits, your goods move through the border faster, less hassles, less scrutiny, less random checking, goods being pulled and so forth like that. You're assigned an account manager from Customs, so you have the name, telephone number, and email address of an officer in Customs working on your behalf that you can access for an array of different reasons and so forth. You get a get out of jail free card. And what we mean by that is that you will have already mitigated your circumstances with Customs if you end up having a problem with them if you're already in the program. Program started in 2003 after the events of 9/11. We've been advocating and been involved in that program from the very beginning. One of our clients became actually the 8th company in the United States to enter the program. And there are about 13,000 companies in the program out of about 60,000 that would be eligible for it. Okay. So it's clearly something that really every company should consider, and particularly with the state of mind of Customs today. I think it's even a more important aspect. So in summary, I hopefully put forward to you, a better understanding of how resilience and sustainability can be achieved. The culture that comes from the top drives the approach. The approach is a risk management approach. Okay. Stop chasing costs. Try to get the best value for your spend. Okay. Build in risk management and risk mitigation strategies, of which I've identified 20 of them to you. Stop chasing costs and obtain the best value for your spend. And always appreciate the foreign trade zones is really a significantly top option for you. And within your own geographic area, you have a really good partner in the World Trade Center of Denver to be able to help you evaluate that option and also to find the process of how to get to that final destination of getting FTZ activation. So with that, we have some time. So if anybody wants to ask a question, provide a comment, or you're welcome to challenge anything that I put forward, be more than happy to discuss that.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation. Again, not only about the overview of the and challenges and opportunities of FTZs, but also some other strategies. And it's as you go through the list, there is so much to consider, right? So I really love your last comment that you made about the value. What gives you the best value?
Right.
So with that, I do see this question in the chat for you from John. What types of IT system capabilities does an operator typically need to administer FTZ? May you speak a little more about record keeping as well?
Okay. So it's a great question. So Customs does not have any specific requirements for a technology in a foreign trade zone. What they require is that you have an accountability system that allows you to receive the merchandise into your facility, move it into inventory. If there's manufacturing or production, follow it and track it through production. And then when it goes back into inventory, and as it leaves the facility and exit it as either as an import or an export. So for the most part, companies have to create a technology to do that. So our first option when we're involved in helping a company become a foreign trade zone is if they have an existing WMS or an ERP system, what we try to do is use that existing system that they have in place and modify it. It might be adding some additional fields such as harmonized tariff number, origin, duty applications, and things like that. And we integrate it with the import provider, and we integrate it with the outbound provider, so that you have a closed system. If the system cannot be adapted, and sometimes that happens, there are bolt-on technologies that are available that you can utilize, okay, at a lower cost. And then there are complete systems. Okay, there are about 6 or 7 companies that provide full foreign trade zone packages for both distribution and manufacturing. They work very successfully, very well. But the only concern with that is that they carry a very high cost. Okay, involved when you buy the whole system. So we look to the other two options, either modification or just bolt-on is your best option. But there's another option, which is that there are a number of service providers, um, transportation companies. One of the companies that we work with is a company called Sparks Logistics, based in Charlotte. And if they're handling the inbound freight and the customs brokerage work, they have a technology that dips into a company's, and will work in keeping the system in place, both for distribution and manufacturing as an extension of their import transaction file system. So there are probably about a dozen forwarders that actually have that capability now that we're aware of. So again, you can get the access to a technology through the utilization of the correct service provider. And we know who they all are, and you're welcome to reach into us and we can point you in some direction. In terms of record keeping, you have the same responsibilities in a foreign trade zone as you do in import and export record keeping, which basically is that you have to keep the records for 5 years from the point of entry into the United States. And the records have to contain all the detailed information of the import, where it originated from, pieces, weights, HTS numbers, duty rates, all those different things. And as it leaves the facility, the 7501s as it's an import, and the 7512s as an export, all has to be maintained for 5 years. If you create the correct technology as an extension of your ERP, or you get a bolt-on, or you use the service provider technology, or you buy a complete system, all those systems will include the record keeping requirements as well as another option for you. So it's not any different records are kept. It's the same records, just probably a much higher volume of them because you have all these transactions coming in and all those transactions going out.
Thank you, Tom, for your answer. And it just again shows how important it is to set up the right operational processes within the company.
Right. And that's one of the things, of partnering with like the World Trade Center of Denver that has the bandwidth and the capability to help guide you in the right direction, and they have access to additional people to provide support as well. And anybody who's on the call today, and any of the associations that you have with the World Trade Center of Denver, we provide a 2 free-hour consultation. So you're welcome to reach in, and we're more than happy to give you a point you in a direction or provide guidance to you on what next steps could potentially be.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. We have one more question. I think we have just a few more minutes to answer one more question, and then we also want to hear from Emma Howard from Audit, who has joined our call. So just stay tuned here for a second. Question from Olga. Can you please share a link to the CBP program? I think you're referring to CTPAT, Olga, probably that's the program you're referring to. We actually also have a training, and again, you can read more and consult with Tom or with World Trade Center Denver as well here.
All you have to do is go to cbp.gov, which will bring you to the customs website, and on their homepage, there's a link for CTPAT there. So just go to cbp.gov, and then on the homepage, there's a link for CTPAT.
Thank you. And here's a little bit more kind of to Olga's question there. My R&D department, manufacturing company, is negotiating the sale of the licensing of one of our technologies to Japan. Will this transaction be obligated with the tariffs, and can we benefit from FTZ?
Sure, if you're importing a finished product or even parts or components, the FTZ would be very beneficial. But you have to check, and we certainly can help you. But if you have a licensed custom house broker working on your behalf, that's where you should first turn to. Is in the world of importing, there's a concept called assists, ASSISTS, assists. Assist says that if an importer provides information or capability to a foreign supplier for the purpose of them manufacturing goods that now are being imported into the United States, that there's a formula that customs has that you have to declare an additional value on the commercial invoice for the value of that assist. So it could be tools or dies, equipment, machinery, wherewithal, capability, technology, right? Intellectual property rights, all those kind of things can fit into that category and so forth. And they're very, very distinct guidelines that customs has in there. And the normal party you would turn to is your custom house broker, who generally would have access to that and can tell you whether or not one that assist to the foreign supplier qualifies to be actually an assist, and then give you the formula that you'd have to use to declare a higher value on your invoices when the goods come through the border.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Olga, for your question. Tom, thanks again for sharing your knowledge. It's been an amazing presentation. And actually, Tom is presenting and training for some other topics that he mentioned today as well with World Trade Center Denver in the next couple of weeks. One of it is transfer pricing, custom valuation, and cross-border compliance, which is going to be on June 24th. You can see that on our calendar, so I invite all of you to sign up for that. Again, let's all say thank you to Tom. Share also your comments in the chat. Tom, we appreciate you as a member of World Trade Center Denver and your expertise. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge. We truly, truly appreciate that.
You're welcome. I appreciate the opportunity.
With that, I would like to invite Emma Howard with audit to tell us a little bit more about the program that she's running. Emma, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to see if my video will come on, but it looks like it's having a little trouble this morning. No problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Howard. I am the Senior Manager of Strategy and Special Projects with the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. We are so thrilled to partner with World Trade Center Denver and all of the amazing subject matter experts that they bring to the table, with Tom as a great example, to support our Colorado businesses as they navigate the ever-changing tariff ecosystem. The program that was developed in partnership with World Trade Center Denver was born out of an executive order from the governor's office asking audit to focus on the challenges that the tariffs have inflicted on our Colorado businesses. And after interviewing and surveying a number of businesses, we identified some of the largest challenges and put together this program with World Trade Center Denver to try to mitigate some of those impacts on Colorado businesses. So, of course, these webinars are part of that program. This is our 6th webinar, and we have a couple more in the works coming down the line. So please stay posted for future iterations of this program. In addition, we offer subsidized projects with subject matter experts through World Trade Center Denver. So if you have questions about your tariff classification, about global supply chain, and other specific international trade questions, or need help from a subject matter expert, you can reach out to World Trade Center Denver. They will get you connected with an expert who can support your work on that. And audit will support some of the funding for that project as well. So please reach out to World Trade Center Denver if you have specific questions. You can also email me if you're interested in other audit programs that may mitigate some of the impacts that you or your business are facing. We have a number of access to capital projects and programs that have availability to support businesses in navigating this tricky time. And we are here for any of your general business needs as well. Please reach out if you have any questions. And thanks again to Tom and Tanya and World Trade Center Denver for this partnership.
Thank you, Emma. And again, I just want to say we truly appreciate the support that Office for Economic Development and International Trade is providing to companies. So do take that opportunity. All you need to do is just fill out that request form, and we can help you with that. You don't have to be doing this all by yourself. With that, I would like to leave you with 3 events and trainings that we have coming up. Number 1, as I mentioned already, Tom Cook will be teaching one more course on June 24th. So register for that one if that's if you have more questions about transfer pricing, custom valuation, cross-border compliance. If you want to meet more in person and network, we invite you to 501, which is on June 25th, a networking event. And then lastly, if you're filing for the refund, consider joining the training on July 8th, which is actually called Filing Cape Declaration. With that, thank you so much. Enjoy your Friday and have a great day, everybody.